Right now, we're going to bring in some legal experts to discuss the grand jury decision and break down this ruling and perhaps what comes next. Cleveland attorneys Tera Coleman and Henry Hilow are here with us right now. Thank you both for coming in. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tera, I'm going to begin with you. What is your reaction? What did the grand jury's decision say to you?
Well, it says that they really did deliberate and went through this evidence pretty thoroughly, I think, given the timing of everything. And this was their decision. So what it ultimately says is that they did not find probable cause to bring charges against these officers.
Henry, let me ask you that same question. This grand jury took a week. Now, 8 officers to consider. Is that a long period of time, but just the right period of time? How would you characterize it?
It's the right period of time because they came to the decision that they believe the evidence supported. I think it's also important to note that that investigation was done by the Attorney General's office and taken out of Summit County. So I think there's got to be a feeling and hope that people recognize there was an independence to that investigation. We have to have faith in how we do things. And I think it's important.
We are going to hear from the city of Akron in about 15 minutes. But Henry, let me ask you, if you're the city of Akron, if you're the police department, what's next for you in this?
The individual officers now, I'm sure their disciplinary process will start, and they'll look to see within their department if all their policies were followed appropriately. I'm sure the officers will be guaranteed, and then their internal investigation will start, and they'll determine that if all the process and procedures that were followed were correct.
So the timeline here is the internal investigation comes after what we heard today.
It does, and it's important to recognize the two should not be done at the same time because your Fifth Amendment rights are reflective. But here's the other thing you got to remember. This will now be looked at by the Justice Department because they look at all these cases. So in terms of the criminal investigation, for purposes of the state of Ohio and state charges, it's over. But I'm sure they'll transfer us to the federal government now to look at through the Justice Department.
Which, Tera, is my next question to you. The Attorney General said several times today, this means the state has not filed any charges, but there could be more charges to come. We've heard from the family earlier, a wrongful death lawsuit perhaps could come from there. Let's talk about possible federal charges. What would have to happen for that to come to be?
Yeah, so the family can bring a civil suit after this, and that could be wrongful death in state court, or they could also bring what's a 1983 action for excessive force is another civil remedy that the family has to bring a civil lawsuit to hopefully in some way get some type of justice for what happened there. And in the civil arena, there is a lower burden of proof there, which, helps out in that arena.
In the federal case, if there are federal charges, what would be the next step in that?
Oh, if there are federal charges, then as Henry was saying, that will be the DOJ will look into this and see if they're going to come at this from a civil rights angle.
Is that automatic? Would the federal government automatically look into that?
That's within their discretion.
Somebody would have to call for that, or that's something they would just decide on their own, perhaps?
Usually, they would decide on their own. I think normally they do look at most of these cases, but there's no mandate that they have to.
Gotcha. Henry, we talked about this earlier. I was talking with our legal analyst, Stephanie Haney, about the grand jury, and I think it's important for folks to understand that a grand jury operates much differently than what we would call a regular jury. Could you please kind of explain that for us?
Absolutely. It's not a finding of guilt. It's a finding of probable cause. I think the most important aspect people have to remember, it's secret. So you're going to know the evidence in this case, but you're not going to know who testified. And I think it's important to note that that jury is made up of the community, and it was interesting the question was asked, what was the mix in the community, men, women, racial, and everything. And I think it's important for us as citizens to step back, at least respect the process. There's all avenues that are available still. Obviously, the family, before this even came out, retained civil counsel, going to pursue this civilly. But I think it's important that grand jury, there was a reason why it was created to be secret, and it's to protect those that are testifying. It's protect those that are on the grand jury that are listening to it. But those grand jurors could be your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, and your brother. They're ordinary citizens that don't have a personal agenda.
We've heard that phrase several times today. I'm sure we'll hear it again. Respect the process. Tera, if you had something to say to the community in Akron, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it would have to fall back to that we do have to respect this process. We don't know how that presentation went. We don't know what was in the jurors' minds, and we'll never know what really happened in that secret process. But as pointed out, it is very important and vital to our system that it remains secret. And it's secret for a reason, and because of that, we have to respect that.
Tera Coleman, Henry Hilow, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for coming
Thank
in
you.
today.
God
We do
bless. Take
appreciate
care.
it.